back, everybody, for episode 2 of Chat United. We're excited to be back in the studio, and we have a great guest with us today. Welcoming to the podcast today, we are here with Graham Nesselrode. Graham is a longtime ally and advocate for our United Way. Graham was actually the very first president when we launched our Student United Way group. So we're excited to have you here today, and we want to talk a little bit about Student United Way, and then we want to catch up on all things Graham.
All right, I'll give it my best shot.
Okay, well, welcome to the podcast. So
happy to be here.
Let's rewind all the way back to, it would have been 2016, and you got a letter. It was a great year. You got a letter in the mail, and you didn't know a whole lot about this group that was launching, but you had been nominated to be a part of a Student United Way organization. Can you remember that letter? Can you go back that far? Hazy memory?
I remember the weather was cool, and I ran to the mailbox in anticipation. No, I don't remember. I don't remember the letter specifically, but I do remember not having any idea what to expect.
Okay.
So,
can you go back and even imagine why you said yes? You knew me a little bit, so we had a little bit of a personal relationship. But
I'm trying to. That wasn't like my first interaction with United Way. I'd done probably a few service events with some like the downtown PKB stuff, maybe. So I remember, okay, this is the part where you just get to like cut out my rambling.
This is where the editing comes in.
Yeah. I mean, what am I supposed to talk about? What did you ask me?
Why did you say yes? What made you decide you get involved?
I guess to a shallow extent, in the spring of 2016, I would have been looking for service opportunities to put on a college application.
Fair enough.
And granted, some of the opportunities that I had to seek out were better than others. Working at a local soup kitchen is an admirable thing to do, but some of the projects we guys do at the United Way made volunteering fun. So that was a much more positive outlet to get like service hours that meant a little bit more.
I don't think there were a lot of people in that group who started out, dipped their toes in the water because they were building that college resume. And I think that's fair, and I think that's an okay. We always said we didn't care what hooked you. We just wanted to get you hooked to get you in.
Yeah.
So fast forward a little bit. The group gets started. We're having some big meetings, and we're deciding that we're going to look for leadership. And somehow in that big stew pot, you emerge as the guy who's going to be the very first president of our Student United Way, where there's no job description, no expectation, and not a real solid roadmap.
Yeah, I like to consider myself the George Washington of the Student
United Way. George Washington, trailblazer.
I honestly think that appointment would be attributed to just talking the loudest at the first couple of meetings. People are like, this guy, he says words really loud. He must know what's going on.
He seems articulate.
Stacey knows his whole name, so like he must be the guy that we're going to look to.
But you came out of the gates really strong for us. So one of the first things I remember is we were launching campaign that year. We were going out and talking to different workplaces, and we were going to be going to talk to a group of teachers at Parkersburg High School. And you took that and actually ran with it and did that yourself. So you went into the faculty at your high school and gave the pitch for United Way totally solo. And I think that may be your first official outing in the community, maybe.
Yeah.
But you came out of the gate strong and hot and made a mark. And you stayed strong that whole year. I mean, you really stood that organization up on its feet and got us going.
I remember it was exciting. The ambiguity of getting it started was a little bit daunting, but also it was, I guess, refreshing because it was kind of like, all right, there's no real expectation, so we couldn't really fail. At the very least, we had a group of people that we could get together to do community service with, and we knew we could count on that core group that became kind of like the executive board of the Student United Way. And so I guess it was easy to kind of just start running forward because it was like, all right, whatever we do, if it fails, we can fix it. If it works, then we'll write it down and we'll try it again.
But it was better than doing nothing.
Yeah, and I think we had a good group of people that, we were all willing to kind of call each other out because we all knew that we didn't know what we were doing. So it was kind of like, all right, don't be Joe Cool, like just. Let's try to start a simple goal and run from there.
Entrenched in accountability. I'll definitely say that. So backing up, and you would remember this, but the reason that Student United Way, the reason it even became a concept was because we had a student service day, and I think that was the first time you'd actually really had a touch point with us.
Yeah.
And our goal when we did that student service day was, what if we could get, 50, maybe 70 students to come out? And that year was just off the charts. Right after the very first event, we have 575-ish students across Wood County that got involved that year. And it was mind-boggling for us. It absolutely blew us away. What was really mind-boggling was the reaction in the community, because the reaction of people in the community was they expected your generation to do nothing. They did not expect to see a day of hard work out of you. They did not expect to see empathy out of you. When the day ended, and I was honestly just exhausted and like mental shutdown, my emails started popping and the texts started popping, and I thought, oh gosh, what have we done today? What's gone wrong?
What did we burn down?
Who left? And it was people saying that was amazing. And so from that day is where the Student United Way organization was born. But go back to that day with me, and why do you think that people had such a low expectation of this generation? Just be totally candid. Like, why was it such a surprise that a group of 500 students would show up and put in a day of hard work?
I think, and I can't speak to the people that are older than us that maybe didn't expect a lot. But I think when it comes to the idea of telling a bunch of high school kids they can miss class for the day to do service, like everybody's like, of course they're gonna go because they get to miss class. And for a select group of people that might have been the case, that was the mindset. But if you're gonna miss class to do anything, like community service is probably the best option. And so I think there were probably a lot of people who looked at that and just didn't expect the turnout, because we get this bad rap of being lazy, and the whole concept of immediate gratification is tied with our generation hard, and so people lose sight of like the impact of service, and people are just less interested in doing it, I guess. And so I guess from the outside looking in, you would not have expected people to have jumped on to that opportunity as hard as they did. And to be fair, I don't even think I expected to get as many people as we did. We just had a kind of like the right mix of people to walk into school and say, hey, here's something good that we can go do, and it drew the right crowd in, luckily. And then the projects were, they were interesting. I remember, I think I ended up at the city park with a leaf blower and a reflective vest, and I was like, okay, you know what, yeah. And I think I still have a picture of a group of 15 of us behind the fence, the chain gang pose. But I don't honestly know why people don't expect as much out of our generation when it comes to kind of giving back. I do know that in situations like that, especially at that age, it was like the lack of expectation almost makes it easier to accomplish more, because you're not thinking, okay, this is what they're expecting of me. It's just like, no matter what I do, it's going to be above 100% because they're expecting 0. So I think that helps, and I think that's like as the organization develops, it's important to like kind of keep that naive mindset where it's like, okay, you should not expect students to give back, but don't make it mandatory, because then that defeats the whole purpose.
And it wasn't mandatory, and you kept showing up. So knowing that we were going to sit down and do this, so the group was a ton of fun that year. But knowing we were going to do this, I sat down and pulled some records in the office, and you, in that first year as president, logged more than 230 hours of community service. And thinking what I know about you, I think you probably logged double that and just didn't choose to log your hours. If we're just going to be real about
I'm still coasting on those hours.
Yeah, I'm sure you're still logging that on applications, and that's fine. But so you said that the projects were interesting, and they were very different. I think they were very different. They were always intended to be different than what you would do with a service group within the high school. It was always intended to be student-driven and really interest-driven. What was impactful about the projects? When you think about some of the kind of crazy things that we did, what was the biggest impactful piece that stood out to you?
I think, kind of like I already said, when you mandate like a service event, which happens a lot in like, extracurricular activities, whether it be a sports team or a club at school, like when it's mandated, it doesn't have the same feel. There is a certain like selfishness to it, like the idea of it's like, I'm going to go do something positive. And, if you're lucky, it extends beyond that, because you get to see, whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's a cleanup project, whether you're packing lunches, or I can't remember off the top of my head all the things that we did. it's just like it's nice to just see the immediate effects of like what you're doing, and also it's like of all the things that I could be doing today, again like it's like this is the best
I'm
this is
making
the
good
best
choices.
option. Yeah.
There was a moment with you on a project that it stuck with me because I've shared the story to other students as we've been recruiting over the next what would be the next almost 5 years. We were doing a little free library project, and I think you
Yeah.
picked up on it probably because someone else dropped the ball or had a conflict, and so you sometimes became that go-to guy of, sure, I'll skip school Tuesday. I mean, I can miss school and I'll fill in on Tuesday.
I'll give you my whole day.
But you were one niche of the project was you were driving around some of the more challenging areas of our community. And we were looking at places that we might drop little free libraries. And I remember you coming back to the office. And so you've grown up in the Mid-Ohio Valley, and you come from a very service-minded, community-centered family. So
Yeah.
none of this was really new for you. But you came back in, memorable to me, had the realization that we were trying to place books into those communities, which for you probably seemed a little bit pointless because I'm guessing that you'd always grown up with books around you and that was never something that you were, and when you saw some of the communities that we were placing them in, I remember your reaction when you came back in, because I don't think you had maybe never firsthand been standing in those pockets of our community and realizing that there were, in fact, I think your words were something about there were small kids in that community. You saw small children outside of houses and on porches, on streets, and it just remember, for me that was a moment that stuck for a long time because I think there was a pivot for you there.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I remember a lot, like early on in my interactions at the United Way office. I can't remember the exact term, but like the concept of like it kind of being a lottery, like where just because I was born
zip code
on
lottery.
on the other side of the street, it can have a pretty damning effect on your life and your lifestyle as a result of that. And it, that concept in and of itself isn't difficult to wrap your mind around because you hear that and you're thinking like across the world. Obviously there's places that don't have the same opportunities as we do here. But what you don't realize is kind of those issues that exist like down the street from you. And I think I realized a lot of that, doing some of the work that we did in high school. And it makes it hit closer to home. And again, like we already talked about, it makes it that much more impactful because you're like, okay, I'm not raising money to, to save people that I'll never meet. It's like I'm doing something tangible to help somebody that I probably go to school with, and it's I think it's a hard pill for some people to swallow, especially because as a high school kid, it's you don't have to think about all the negative things if you're in a good situation. Most kids, you just wake up, you get in your car, you get in your buddy's car, you go to school, you do what you need to, you go home. But there's other kids that have like you know exponential higher amount of challenges before they even get to school, and I think exploring parts of our own community and some of the issues in our community that don't really get talked about, maybe even have like a taboo around them, really kind of opens you up. And after you have that experience, it's difficult to ignore it. I mean, I have that same like epiphany over and over again where you're driving through somewhere to get to a place you've never been and you just see something and you're like, wow, okay. And people I think like to act like it, the small steps help too. You don't have to level a neighborhood and rebuild everybody's house to help a culture or get somebody out of a situation.
Yeah, impact can be in increments for sure. I mean, we saw that with you guys. You guys made huge impact. Graham, if you were looking at somebody who's in high school right now, because I mean, undoubtedly, last year was a very challenging year for our Student United Way. I mean, we saw school disrupted, just a little over halfway through the year. And the whole world's been disrupted. So here we are trying to launch next week. We're going to offer some virtual connectivity to projects and posting projects, but we still want to get everybody, back out, boots on the ground. If you're looking at someone in a high school setting who's just facing all the challenges, everything that is so irregular right now, why would you tell them to take the time to get involved? What's valuable? Why should they make space in a really irregular and crowded schedule right now to become a part of our Student United Way?
I think it's the most productive break you can take from your everyday life, where it's an outlet in a certain capacity because you're helping yourself whether you realize it in the short term or not. It's gonna open your eyes to things and it's gonna that's going to have a much longer lasting impact. But it's a healthy outlet. It's a way that you can help people who are closer to you than you realize. And the important thing is not to have a savior complex about it, because a lot of the issues that are most important to try and tackle like that isn't necessarily one person's fault. It's not like they put themselves in those situations or those situations like with their own personal choices. So I mean, for high school kids, I mean, yeah, for the crowd that's interested in going to college, there's going to be that, you know, sometimes it's a tangible requirement. Other times it's just the idea, okay, I should have some service opportunities that I can talk about in an interview or whatever. And that's not all bad, but don't if you're gonna go get those hours, don't do it just to do it. Open your eyes while you're there, at least see what you can take from it, and then don't stop doing it just because you've hit the requirement.
So let's talk about that piece, because I like to think that you're like Pentacled when you were with us at Student United Way, but I realized there was a next chapter. So next chapter for you has still been here in the Mid-Ohio Valley, and you've been at Marietta College. What does that service piece look like for you? How do you think that's impacted next chapter for you?
I've actually gotten involved in some really interesting stuff in terms of community service since I've been in college. One of the first things I did when I got to Marietta, I'd never done anything service-wise directly involved in education, and so we did some work at Ely Chapman.
Mm-hmm.
Is it Ely or Eli?
Ely.
Okay.
I believe.
Yeah, and so I had some cool chances. What we did there was mainly labor, moving books, helping stock their libraries and stuff like that.
Too, yeah.
And I think the cool part there was just see those resources that are available to kids and know that organizations like that exist and for the most part are doing well. But then also in the educational side, I volunteered at the Castle, the museum in Marietta. And I was a docent, so I gave tours of the castle for.
Did you have a costume?
No, but I had to wear white gloves, so it was pretty official. And I got a cool chance to just, there was a weird mix of tourists and kindergartners that came through. So it was I don't know, that aspect of service wasn't as holistic, but it was just kind of cool to take part in local history a little bit. But I mean, since then, especially through student government at Marietta, we had opportunities. We hosted a couple of events that went really well. My freshman year, we started an event with a subcommittee of SGA that they call the Founders Formal, and it was just a chance for campus to come together, dress up, have a drink, go have a good time with your friends, and raise money for an entire lineup of philanthropies. Basically, what you do is you would sign up for this as an organization. You would choose your philanthropy, and the organization with the highest participation rate would get to donate X amount of the proceeds to their philanthropy of choice. And so, I haven't had an opportunity to do as much hands-on stuff in college, and I don't know, I miss it. It's I'm eager to see the Student United Way get back on its feet. Maybe not in person very soon, but in the coming years, so that I'll have an opportunity to kind of
mentor,
get back in the
field.
Yeah.
Right. But you've had a really active time at Marietta College. I mean, you've been very active even beyond just the realm of community service. So.
I think my biggest claim to fame was on student government freshman year. I got chicken wings in the dining hall on Wednesdays.
That's a platform. I mean, you can stand on that for a long time.
People were big fans of that.
I followed that course along on social media. I checked in, did some peeking in. Actually was super worried about you this spring because you had a huge trip planned right before the world turned on its head. So
I've been deported.
Everybody can't say that.
I can add that to my list of accomplishments, if you will. Yeah. So I guess the quick explanation: I was supposed to have studied in Shanghai, and the process to do a semester abroad it's insanely difficult. So of course I procrastinated, and so I would say
it's solid to know some things don't change.
Yeah,
sure,
absolutely.
There are constants in the world.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I guess it would have been the like November of 2019. Got everything squared away for that, and then I had a buddy from Germany living in Shanghai at the time, and I'd been talking to him. We were making plans for when I was supposed to arrive, I think in late January. And he starts texting me kind of like, I don't know if you've heard, but things aren't great here. And we had not heard, like nobody was talking about it here yet. This was early December. And then by the end of December, it was like, oh yeah, no, you're definitely not going to China. And like the third party that I had planned this trip through, they were like, well, I mean, you can still try. And I look at my parents like, I'm going to go. Like, I don't care about.
So as late as January, they were saying.
No, as late as like mid-December. Okay. And then all of a sudden, they were like, oh yeah, if you come, we're just going to lock you in your dorm for the foreseeable future. So I just wouldn't come. And I was like, I still kind of want to go. Like, I'd rather be locked in my dorm in China than Marietta. And so things fell apart really quickly. And then it became like the dilemma of requirement. For me to get the degree that I'm trying to obtain, I needed to have a semester abroad. I'd been abroad and done some like case study stuff, but it wasn't sufficient. I needed to go abroad. And so then I had to look at programs that I would, for one, have time to apply to, because by this point it was January. And so I needed time to apply, and then time to get a visa, time to get there. And so all of a sudden, all these programs that started in January were just off the table because you can't get a visa that fast. And I didn't want to go. I think one of the places was Nepal, and I was like, I have no business studying abroad in the mountains of Eastern Asia. And so started looking around, and basically I became confined to the Southern Hemisphere because while we were having, our winter break, they were on their summer break, and so classes down there didn't start until March.
Okay.
And so, lo and behold, I end up getting shipped out to Argentina.
And how much Spanish do you speak?
None.
None.
My favorite thing to say was, lo siento, mi español no es bueno. And I could say it so well that people were like, oh, there's no way. And I'm like, no, that's all I know to say.
Because you have become fairly fluent.
You
were aspiring to be fluent in Mandarin.
Okay. I definitely know more Mandarin than I do Spanish. And so, hence the trip to China. I was going to go learn more Chinese. It was going to be a great time. And so now I'm on my way to Argentina, which, to be fair, great place. I had a fantastic time. I don't think that I knew anything about Argentina before I got on a plane to go there. I was like, I know now that it's in South America because that's where they're sending me. And pretty much all I knew from there was like Lionel Messi and soccer. And so talking about culture shock, I knew nothing, but I think it was almost better because then I didn't have any preconceived idea of what to expect.
Well, there's no expectations.
No. And then I found out quickly that the Spanish I took in high school didn't even help because their Spanish is different. And somehow it's like more like Italy, I guess. It's like a huge Italian population. I don't know. Estados Unidos. You could not say Americans. I found out very quickly it was disrespectful to refer to you or your crew as Americans because they are also Americans. We are all Americans.
Okay.
So, and so we were Estados Unidos or something along that. Or what was it? Sucio means dirty. I heard people say that to me a lot. So, didn't have the biggest fans on the streets of Buenos Aires, Argentina. But all around, positive experience. We were there about a month, 3 weeks, I think. And we had all these plans. That weekend, we were supposed to go to Iguazu, which is South American. It's like the Brazilian-Argentine version of Niagara Falls.
Okay.
It's actually like 10 times bigger, though. And we had found this all-inclusive trip where they were going to fill a bus full of students.
So you found a group of students?
Yeah, and it was like, we paid $200, and it was like, we got to stay at a resort on the side of a waterfall for a weekend, and we were like, we are 100% committed to this trip. And then Friday came, and we had a bunch of ominous emails, and then a call from the United States Embassy that was like, yeah, you're going home.
And I was like,
yeah. More or less. And so then, I mean, you talk about a complete 180. It was like, oh, we're having a great time, learning so much. And then it was like, I think I want to cry. Like, that I have to go home? Like, I think I'm gonna, I'm crying.
I'm
Yep,
sad.
yep,
Yeah, I think I'm sad.
This is tumultuous.
I now have 5 Spanish sentences.
And I don't want to go home.
How quickly were you out of country at that point?
Like 24 hours tops. Because what was frustrating is things at the time were so much worse here than they were there. So we were like, don't send us back. Like, I was like, I'm gonna get it on my way home, not here. And then of course, like I call the airline, and the wait time was like 6 days. Like, it was absurd. Because if you called, or if you went online, it said if you needed help in the next 24 hours, you had to call. If you called, it said if you don't need help in the next 24 hours or whatever, go to the website. The wait time is currently 13 hours.
So it was a vicious circle.
And I was like, oh my. I don't know if my mom actually made it, but she just ended up driving to Charleston, to the airport, to talk to the Delta counter to try and get it worked out. Because at the time, it was like, to get my flight fixed was probably going to be the best way to do it. Other than that, I'd have to spend like $2,500 for a one-way flight to Miami.
And then you'd still be in Miami. You were still driving you in a hot
and I was like, please God, Mom, just send me to Miami. Like, I'll walk home. Send me to Miami by myself for a week after this. That's what I need. But,
so most of your group very quickly dispersed like that. I mean,
it was sad because like we'd made these great friends over the last 3 weeks, and we were getting just to that point of a healthy friendship where we were starting to get mad at each other a little bit.
And you were going to the resort for the weekend. Yeah, it was over.
And so things fell apart so quick. And we just, we got out of Dodge, and then all of a sudden I was home, and it was just like, the culture shock was almost more intense because I went from preparing to be away from my friends and family for 6 months to being almost like, pretty comfortable in this culture and like, my neighborhood and all that, making friends, blah, blah, blah. And then now it's like I go home. Not only am I going home, but it's a completely different situation than what it was when I left.
Because the time you came home, campus was closed.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
And so I was, my classes, I took my classes online, like in Argentina. And so I really had like no connection with Marietta at that point. And so I just sat in my apartment for 14 days immediately after I got home. And it was just pretty miserable. But we all went through that. So everybody knows about that.
In some varying shape. So I think we're all still going through that.
But,
how's your Spanish now? Has it picked up?
No, it's still not great.
Okay.
There was this really awesome breakfast cafe down the street from my host family's home, and so I learned how to order, my coffee and biscuits every morning. And every morning they'd be like, "Oh, you're getting better."
So you're stuck with the same thing.
Yeah, every day I had.
I'm going for master.
Dos media lunas y café con leche.
Whether you liked it or not, because you learned to say it. Okay.
Yeah, and it was basically like a. I forgot the word that we use. A crescent roll. Yeah, It was like a crescent roll.
So now you've forgotten your English.
Yeah, I'm so cultured now that I started forgetting
you are
English.
such a Renaissance man. I get it.
But now whenever I try to study Chinese, I want to throw in random Spanish words, and that's not how
I feel like that's probably tough in your last semester here.
Yeah.
And this is your last semester, is that right?
No, I've got 2 left. And I'm taking Chinese 301 in the spring, so.
So we keep you local for at least another 12 months.
Yeah, well.
Sort of?
We'll see. Hopefully, like, May 10th comes and they just, like, fly me to Australia and pay me to do something cool.
You think so?
I have no idea.
I think I kind of hope you're around to help us get Student Highway back up on his feet.
Well, I can chime in with my newfound Australian accent when I'm just a bartender in Sydney. Because
throwing in some Mandarin and Spanish. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I think you're good for the group. So.
Yeah.
No, you've had an interesting span of time there in Marietta, and it's been really cool to have you semi-local. So we kind of had eyes on what was going on with you. You can't. You can run, but you can't hide. I keep finding you and drawing you back into. Graham, you did an amazing job of getting that organization launched. Like, I think you get to go down in history as the George Washington, if that's what you want to call it. That's the trailblazing name.
I don't know if George Washington is canceled yet. We might have to find a better one.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to sort through that and where we are on it. But
I am the Graham Nesselrode of Student United Ways.
You did an amazing job, and you rallied people. You had such just innate leadership that year, and you rallied people around you. You got adults excited. You got the confidence of our school system and some of our organizations. And you're just really amazing. I'm not sure that organization could have grown to where it was if we hadn't had just phenomenal leadership that first year. Plus, you did the first 24-hour all-night fundraising stint with us.
Oh, I
and
forgot
I
about
think
those.
you did stay up.
Those were great.
Those were always good times. So we missed that one in the spring.
That was the real college preparation. How to stay up for like the wrong 12-hour period of the day.
Oh, it's brutal. It's absolutely brutal. But I did actually miss that in the spring. So actually, if you're still around in the spring, assuming that gets to resurrect itself, that is probably your perfect. I do remember when you were a freshman in college, they were certain that if they texted you, you would give. And I think they texted you somewhere in the night, because somewhere on some of our social media is a screenshot of a FaceTime.
That I will not be giving this spring. Yeah. I've learned how to operate on a zero balance. But
you're going to give your well wishes for that?
Yes.
Right,
I will give my personal man hours this spring. That's how I'll give back.
Well, thanks for showing up today and coming on Chat United. I mean, this is episode 2, so you almost are trailblazer again.
Yeah, almost.
Yeah.
Pioneer.
You are literally the pioneer for us. So we appreciate everything you did to help us get started, and we appreciate knowing that you're just an arm's reach, and we can still snag you back sometimes. So.
I'll be around for at least a little bit
longer.
We
always love your energy. We always love your stories, even though some of them we can't tell in the podcast because we know your mom's going to watch the podcast. Or listen to the podcast. I'm still learning what you do with the podcast. But your mom's going to dial in.
We'll do like the United Way After Hours podcast.
We should probably, I think there are more stories for an after hours.
We'll do that one downstairs.
And we won't report that to your family.
Yeah.
So, Graham, thanks for being here with us today. Super appreciate it and love getting to see you again. Our second guest today, here on our second episode actually, is another Student United Way alumni with us today. We have Louden Haga, who was also a Student United Way president for us in year 2. So you took over the helms for Graham when Graham left us and headed off to college. So welcome to the podcast today.
Glad to be here.
Oh, happy you could be here. We were lucky to catch you in town. We wanted to have you on the podcast. We thought we were going to have to do this virtually, so it's so much more fun to get to have you live right here with us today.
Yeah, that virtual stuff sucks.
I'm a little Zoom fatigued myself. I can't lie. I'm kind of tired of virtual. So let's back up and talk about Student United Way. I want to talk about what you're doing and why you happen to be in town right now. But let's talk about Student United Way. So you got involved as a sophomore, correct?
Correct.
So the year we launched, you were a sophomore. I think you got that. You probably got the same letter too. At that time, we were kind of reaching out and recruiting our team. First of all, what made you say yes?
Well, one is because I knew you, and
so
two,
you felt pressured.
Yeah, I needed
Let's be honest, okay?
Just a little bit. I needed some community service hours too because I didn't know I was going to be doing what I'm doing now. Then,
okay.
I thought it was better to be prepared.
So you and Graham both have said the same thing. So let's take that exit ramp just for a minute. Why do you think high school students are? You're both saying you did it because you wanted to get the student service hours. So it makes me feel as if those community service opportunities maybe are not just flush within the high school. Do you feel like it was difficult to find any community service opportunity? Was it difficult to find meaningful opportunities? Was it difficult because you were working around a sports schedule? Like, why was that appealing to you? And was it difficult prior to that to feel like you could check that box?
Well, to be honest, prior to that, I hadn't even thought about it. Then I got this letter. My mom's like, "Hey, you should do this."
Okay.
Like, oh yeah, community service hours. That's great.
Okay.
Oh, and this will work around sports. Perfect.
Okay. So it planted the seed, and it seemed flexible then.
Right.
Okay. So you show up for the first meeting. Can you remember what happened? I mean, I don't have a vivid memory of your first meeting, but what was your first impression when you showed up? Because again, you were there from ground level, so we were actually just kind of making it up as we went at that point.
In my first meeting, my first impression was, wow, I know a lot of these people. But then...
Were you surprised who turned out for the meeting? Because it was a very eclectic group. I do know that about year 1.
Somewhat. Yeah.
Okay.
But, I mean, I felt like it was a good group. It was the best group we had the whole time I was there, honestly.
It was a strong group out of year 1, absolutely.
Yeah, the first group's pretty much always the best.
No offense to everybody who came after.
Yeah, no offense, but
so you came to the meeting. You came to meeting 1. A little bit of a little bit of pressure because your mom said, "Hey, you should go. This is gonna be good." It looked flexible. Why did you come back to the second meeting? What happened in the first meeting made you say, "Okay, this could be my group of people for right now"?
It just seemed like a motivated group of people. Like Graham was a big part of it. He's rather charismatic fellow.
He's charismatic.
And just I don't know. I wanted to help give back a little bit because Parkersburg is what it is.
It has challenges.
It's got a lot of challenges, several of them.
It definitely does. And you guys, as a really young group, so like when you hit that with us, you weren't driving. I remember you getting dropped off probably early times of your Student United Way time. I mean, so you're not even 16 yet. That group was really special that year because there was a chorus of empathy within that group. When I shared things with you about the community that maybe you didn't know or struggles that pockets the community faced, you were empathetic. You were bothered by those things, just like Graham going out on the little free library project that we kind of talked about. What resonated with you early on? What was I have an idea what your answer is, but I'm curious what you say. What was the first topic that really kind of dropped that sinker in your heart and you said, I want to be a part of this?
You already know exactly.
I think I know what you're going to say.
It was, I mean, when you pointed, I had no idea that this was an issue until you pointed out it's the fact, hunger in Wood County specifically. I had no idea, like, kids I went to school with, kids I were friends with, they were struggling, their parents were struggling to put meals on the table for them. So that was a big, I want to help my friends eat.
I remember that about that group, about you in particular, when we talked about food insecurity and talked about that was the difference between, and we all know what it is to be hungry. I mean, you hear my rumbling stomach here in a minute. We know what hunger is, but we don't always know what food insecurity is. And so as a group, we learned that year that food insecurity is people who are making choices between, am I going to buy medicine, am I going to buy groceries, am I going to buy low nutritional content food in bulk, am I going to be able to buy nutritionally dense food? And I do remember the reaction that your group had, that was something you wanted to champion right away. I mean, it definitely resonated. What is the first memory you have of the projects that we took on that were meaningful to you? Maybe wrapped around hunger.
The big one was the one I got put in charge of, which was the can sculptures.
Yeah, extravaganza. I think
Extravaganza.
you all named it. Yes.
That was a good time.
Yeah, we did that for 3 years running. We had to take a break from it with COVID this year, but for anybody who doesn't know what extravaganza was, we collected what felt like millions of cans when you had to handle each can a lot of times. But and you all created sculptures, and that first year we placed them all over the downtown Parkersburg area. We had something at Noe Office Supply that was sculpted to look like pencils, and you guys we put out the 1 in 6 at the time was just the statistic. We've now slid over to very close to 1 in 5 people in the Mohave Valley face food insecurity. But you guys were so determined to put that statistic out, and I will forever remember what your sculpture was. If you want to share with the audience what your sculpture was, it was amazing and creative. It was housed in one of our government buildings downtown.
It was in the courthouse annex. I thought it would be a great idea. We made a lightsaber and we wrapped our cans black for the handle and blue for the blade. And we wrapped blue Christmas lights around that to make it light up. We made Star Wars themed signs that we taped to it.
It was awesome.
I thought it was great, but then we got some complaints about it.
Well, there may have been somebody who creatively wasn't sure what the shape of that was and raised the point of phallic symbols, but we solved it because you guys quickly printed more lightsaber labels and put down there. But you had the only light-up sculpture that we've ever had that year, and you built a giant lightsaber inside one of the government buildings. And once you cleared up with signs, everybody was on the same page, and it was fine. It was an awkward moment when you were trying to launch a student organization, but it didn't happen. But it was amazing, and that year we raised over 7,500 pounds of food that was then donated out to the food pantries, and that was really the first big project I remember you guys taking on. Extravaganza has lived on, and I really hope it's something we get to resurrect this year. When you think about the hunger solutions projects that we worked on, there was a project that you really wanted to take on that we never got to fully execute. And so we're going to hope that someday you get to be in the wings to help us make that hunger banquet happen.
I can only hope.
I know it was like your biggest disappointment that you graduated and we never got to execute on the hunger banquet, but it would have been really exciting, and I hope that's something that we can bring. How do you feel like being a part of Student United Way impacted you long term? So it was really fun in the moment, and you pointed Graham and said he's a charismatic guy, but you bring your own charisma and energy I remember one particular, you were going to lead the meeting as the president, and I really should have brought the hat today.
You should have brought the
I
hat.
should have been wearing the hat on the podcast, but you gathered everybody in, and you had a very serious talk with them about why in some pockets of the world, you might want to recap that for everybody and just share your talk and what you were wearing that day.
So what it was, I'm a very strange person, so I bought a Ushanka, which is like a traditional Russian fur hat. It's got the flaps that can come down over your ears. You can tie them above your head, and it even had like a little hammer and sickle emblem on the front of it. And since I was Hunger Solutions, I was like, hey, awesome. A lot of people starved in the Soviet Union. So I brought that to one of our meetings, and I explained, I don't know why I did this, but I explained how the Soviet Union's failure to manage their crops led to, like, 5 million Ukrainians starving, and we don't want starving people.
And I remember,
that was the gist of it.
People were drawn to your committee. I don't know if it was out of fear, out of interest in what you were doing, but you donned the hat. What is it called?
Ushanka.
Ushanka. You donned the hat. You gave this rousing speech about people starving in communist Russia and how that should never happen in America. And it entailed some like banging of fists on the table. And I don't know if it was out of fear or allegiance or excitement, but you're the biggest committee that year. Like everybody was on board. Everybody wanted to work on Hunger Solutions.
Right.
But you always brought that energy. You always brought unique energy and enthusiasm to Student United Way. And the other thing that you brought that was very similar to Graham was sometimes students have scheduling conflicts. Sometimes students overcommit. Sometimes students commit to something and then kind of the energy and commitment wanes. We never had to drop the ball on a project with either of you because as leaders you both stepped in and just went, well, I'll be there on Saturday. And maybe we're 3 people short, well, I'll just fill 3 roles. And that's what I always will remember about you is you never said no. And sometimes you were squeezing that in between practices and work and and a heavy load of classes, but you never said no. And as a leader of that organization, you stood in the gap and filled as many spots as you needed to fill. So for me, you will always be such a memorable leader in Student United Way. For you, what do you think the long-term effect was for you being involved with that group for 3 years? How has that changed the adult you're growing into? I won't say you are, but I hope that you're growing into being an adult. Okay.
It really, I had no idea, most of the issues that we face, around here, and, that's not just, a local thing, that's all over the country and all over the world, and I will say I have had somewhat of a privileged upbringing, and I haven't really had to deal with a lot of those things since I was very small, but, it helped me realize, people go through, everyone goes through their own stuff, and, people need help. Not everyone can, be Superman and save themselves, save everyone. Everyone needs a little bit of help sometimes.
Do you think that's a feeling, an empathy that you will carry going forward?
I believe so. I know I definitely need help, especially with my chemistry homework.
So you feel like the good you've done in the world will bounce back to you in the chemistry help? Okay. Well, let's talk about that a little bit. So once you graduated, and I say abandoned, you say graduated and left, potatoes, and once you abandoned our organization, so where is life taking you now?
Well, right now I'm a sophomore at the Haga University. I'm on the wrestling team, and it's tough. College wrestling compared to high school wrestling it's a whole new world. Here the way my grandpa put it, I was a small fish in a pretty big pond. Just there's so much talent in college wrestling, and it's hard. And the classes are compared to high school, they're a lot harder. There's a lot more work.
Oh, so suddenly now you have to show up, do your assignments.
I actually have to try.
It's interesting.
And you see your teachers a lot less, especially now. I still haven't met my chemistry professor.
Wow. How much of your workload is remote this semester for you?
The only class that I have in person is my chemistry lab. And that's not even ran by my actual professor. There's a separate lab professor for that. Okay. And just, one of my classes is just completely remote, there's no contact. And then another one is, we have one Zoom meeting a week, and we talk about the history of rock and roll music. and it's actually, you'd think it'd be pretty cool, but so far it's been pretty boring.
I hope they're not listening. I hope we don't have a big following on the
I hope so.
podcast. In the,
I hope so too.
Okay, I don't know,
Maybe they'll change
it. Input. So you really can't speak to your sophomore year, and even the tail end of your freshman year was so disrupted with COVID. Did you guys go remote in March? Were you able to finish the semester out on campus?
We got into spring break, which for the wrestling team, you just didn't have to go to class. You still had to stay up there and practice. But towards the end of spring break, they announced that they were going remote for classes for the next week. And then about halfway through that week, they announced that they were just shutting everything down and you needed to go home if you lived on campus.
So you got the normalcy in the fall. So let me ask you about being on the campus at, again, another campus similar to where Graham is at Marietta as far as cultural of the campus. What do you see as far as service opportunities there? Is there a plethora of service opportunities? Is it something you think you have to seek out? Is it prioritized on your campus?
Honestly, up there, like I don't see a lot of like community service groups, especially not even at the university.
Okay.
I don't know if that's just like a private school thing, but you know, we live on the south side of Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and it's pretty right off campus. It's a pretty poor area, so you would think
there'd be lots of opportunities for
that,
service.
But
yeah.
I mean, thus far I have not really seen hardly any.
So as an incoming freshman, you didn't see community service fairs or
the most community service thing that we did was as like the athletic teams, we would help donate clothes and things. We would go to the middle school that's right off campus and hand out clothes to kids.
Okay, but not a big movement of. And the reason I ask that is
really disappointing. Our
Student United Way group was it is quite a bit of an anomaly because most of the Student United Way groups are college based. Most of those are on residential college campuses. It's really strange for it to be a high school group. It's just something we wanted to do, and we felt like we had the grassroots to do. So I'm always curious. Graham and I even at one point had some conversations about could we get that kind of a group launched at Marietta, because we do consistently hear that other than specific niches, maybe through the Greek system or through the athletic team that goes out once or twice and makes that community service appearance, but there's not a real energy and network for that on college campuses. That makes me sad, but I also think it's probably an opportunity for growth there. So just curious what you were seeing there. And I did know the area there, so I knew that there was certainly opportunities for service. But
there are plenty of opportunities. It's just not being taken advantage of.
It's just not being prioritized within a group. Seems like something you could maybe grassroots start up in your spare time.
Possibly.
Yeah, I think we'll get back to you on that one. Maybe let that pressure again. If I send you a letter in the mail, not something like that. If your mom calls and says, Stacy thinks you should. Let's talk about, so the kids that are in high school right now, and you heard me say this with Graham, like, I know they're distracted, they're stretched really thin, here in Wood County, Schoology is just a challenge, never mind the class content. Everything seems extra hard right now. So it's an extra difficult time for us to look at people and say, we want you to get involved with this. But at the same time, our community has more needs right now than any other time in memorable history. I mean, the needs, all the needs that existed before March 1st are still there, and then all the needs that have just been exponentially grown because of COVID. And yet it's a difficult time to mobilize and engage volunteers. If you're talking to someone who's in high school right now, and we won't count your sister, because she's just not going to do it if you say do it. She's going to actually go the other way. But let's talk about everybody else that would maybe be in your high school. What could you say to someone in high school right now that you feel like would really motivate and really explain to them the value that they would get from being involved and why they could be really impactful right now? I mean, what's the call to action that gets these kids to re-engage with us?
I'd have to say, you live in this community. You should want to see it flourish a little bit. We have plenty of issues here that need to be addressed.
So how do you counter the feeling that happens so much with young people at a semi-small community like ours of, I see the problems, I see the deficits, and I just can't wait to get out of here? So how do you combat that and get them to to invest in what it could be.
Like you might want to leave, but your family is still here, and not all of your friends are going to leave. You're going to know people here, and this is going to be where you grew up. You should want to help take care of your hometown.
And if you're successful enough to feel like you're going to the next level, somebody in this community created that for you.
Right, exactly.
You are a product of what's good in this community.
Yes, I don't think I would have gone as far as I have athletics wise if I didn't if like South Wrestling didn't have such a huge following.
It is a supportive community. Yeah, it is in so many ways. Talk to me about being a student within the high schools, because sometimes we did miss school. I mean, Graham referenced that. Sometimes you did get to step away from a day of classes to do some of the service. Did you find your high school environment to be supportive of Student United Way, or did they sometimes view that as, well, let's just stop there. Did you think that they were supportive?
For the most part, I would definitely say that we did. I remember, I think it was my freshman year. I didn't even know that this was like student service day was happening. It was just like, why are there 18 buses in front of the school? Why is everyone leaving? Where's everyone going? We had like...
There's an evacuation. I've been left behind.
Was there a bomb threat? Like, what's going on here? There were like 300 some kids from my school alone that signed up that day. And they were really supportive then. But then I feel like, as a new administration came in, support for that kind of waned, and they were more worried about like getting like their own food pantry stocked up, and they didn't want us to miss class as much. But I mean, I feel like they still accommodated that a little bit. It just wasn't nearly as much as it was that my freshman year.
Okay. What do you think we can do better to work hand in hand? We don't ever want to be seen as a competitor for the school's key club or a competitor for student council. There's so much good work to do that there can never be too many of us doing the good work. I always think that a value of Student United Way was the cross-school approach. I thought it very much kept students from staying within their cliques, because we had students from all different schools, from all different walks of life. I felt like you all became a kind of a band of comrades that might not have happened outside of that. I mean, I think you made friends that you might not have made outside of Student United Way. So that it shouldn't be a competition factor. How can we, seeing it from both sides, how can we better convey that message and be more cooperative with the schools? Because we don't want to replace anything they're doing or not doing.
Right.
We just want to coexist, and we kind of travel in a different lane. So
yeah, I would just ask them like, hey, you want to cooperate on this, because I know not a ton of high school kids really donate to the food pantry, because I had the lady in charge of the food pantry, Madam Braun. I took French in high school. I had her, and sometimes she would complain about like the food pantry not being as full as she would like it to be. But like I know, like businesses were really good at getting especially like some of their employees even would donate, or people that would just let me donate there. It was like my parents' business.
Sure.
Our drivers would donate a ton of food to the food drive, which I thought was awesome of them.
Yeah. I think sometimes what happens in the high schools, and this was never meant to be a criticism, it was a really way to fill the gap, was because they're in the business of education. Community service is a side gig for them. So they're busy, and I absolutely understand that. I feel like teachers are more busy and overrun than ever before. But sometimes just saying you're going to have a food drive, you've been having food drives in your schools as long as you can remember. Since third grade, you've been having food drives. But all of a sudden, you were a 15-year-old sophomore, and you didn't really understand why that was a need in our community. So what we've always tried to do is go that extra step and make sure that you understand we're not just collecting food, we're collecting food because this is the need in our community. We're not just collecting food to go through the motions. The same as the Little Free Libraries, and we talk about Graham going out, but making sure that there was an understanding that we weren't just asking you to donate books to a program, but why we were and where the gaps were. So, we definitely... That's probably an opportunity for growth for us.
Absolutely. I think, especially the food drives would help if, I mean, it would be harder there because some of the kids there are people that need food from these food drives, but educating these kids, like, hey, it could be someone sitting right next to you.
You're sitting right by the face of hunger all the time. I know that we had a moment in that first year of Student United Way where we were using a GroupMe app to communicate. And we had one student who was consistently not making the communications, and I was a little bit puzzled, and then it came to the surface through some conversations that this particular student did not have a cell phone. He had access to his, I think it was an aunt's cell phone, but he didn't have a cell phone. And when I had to come back and share that as a group and say we need to find a workaround for this communication, there were 25 of you stunned in a room to think that somebody would be 16 years old and not have a cell phone. And I remember that being one of our really early epiphany moments of, you don't know what struggle looks like. It doesn't have a specific uniform that it wears. I mean, I think that was a moment for everybody to find, and we found the workaround.
Right.
And we made it work. But we actually had lots of students that came through in those 3 years that you were there that actually fit into the groups of people that we were also serving. So, I mean, that always added an extra dimension to it. So, what else do you have to share about Student on the Way, or why it was impactful? What do you want somebody to know about why they should do it, why it still affects you, or why it was a big waste of your time? Edit that out.
Well, it definitely wasn't a big waste of my time.
Now, you got some dates from Student United Way, but we can also edit that out too. So you did sometimes use that as a social network.
Sometimes
yourself, so,
it helps.
Yeah, there's that.
One, it did. Like, I would have never, met some of the people that I did. Like, I would never have become friends with someone from Belpre or Parkersburg Catholic or Williamstown. But like, just the fact that, if for nothing else, it makes you feel good about what you're doing. Like, you're trying to help the community.
Impact with purpose is never selfish.
That's true.
And it's understanding why you're doing what you're doing instead of just going through the motions of dropping a can of corn in a box.
Right. And you should want to see your home, improve from the current state that it's in, because let's be real, Parkersburg it's kind of a rough place sometimes.
We have lots of opportunity for improvement.
A ton of opportunity.
But we also have assets and resources to make that happen. I do firmly
we do
believe
have
that.
a great deal of assets and resources. But you should always want to see your home and your family and your friends, succeed and do well.
Thanks for joining us. We're so lucky that we caught you in town today. You're not really here all the time, so thanks for popping in.
Thanks for having
me. Now
me.
you know where our new digs are, our new volunteer center that we're launching. So if you happen to get another virtual semester and you find yourself back here, we can definitely put you to work. And
I'd love to.
We'd love to have you back. And I'm so sorry I didn't wear tell me the name of the hat again.
The Ushanka?
Ushanka. I have it. It's in my office because it's a good reminder of you, and it's a good laugh, and I didn't even know the name for it. So maybe later maybe next week I'll post a picture of me in the Ushanka. So thanks so much for joining us for episode 2 of Chat United. We loved having both Louden and Graham here with us today, and just looking back over the history of Student United Way, and super excited as we relaunch that program and take it to a little bit more of a virtual format. So thanks for checking in, and we'll see you guys back for episode 3 in a few weeks.